Nari stood before the massive crystal doors and tried not to show her fear. The doors were at least 20 feet tall, carved with images of creatures locked in eternal battle. Behind those doors waited the most dangerous beings humanity had ever encountered. "You don't have to do this," Deho said beside her. The human ambassador had been her supervisor for 6 months now, ever since they arrived on this alien world. His voice was tight with worry. "Yes, I do," Nari replied. She smoothed down her diplomatic uniform, the dark blue fabric suddenly feeling too thin. "They invited me specifically. If I refuse, it could ruin everything we've worked for." Deho shook his head. "They're predators, Nari. Apex predators. Their entire civilization is built on hunting and combat. One wrong move. And nothing," she interrupted, giving him a small smile. "I've read every report. I know what they're capable of. But I also know they want this alliance as much as we do." The doors suddenly swung open with a deep grinding sound. The guard who opened them stood over 7 feet tall, covered in dark scales that shimmered with blue light. His eyes were golden and slitted like a cat's. When he looked at Nari, she felt like prey being examined by something very hungry. "The High Matriarch will see you now," the guard said. His voice was a deep rumble that she felt in her chest. Nari walked through the doors, leaving Deho behind. The rules were clear. Only she had been invited to this meeting. The corridor beyond stretched far into the palace, lit by glowing orbs that floated near the ceiling. The walls were decorated with more carvings, all showing the Varthek in various battles and hunts. The Varthek were terrifying to look at. They stood on 2 legs like humans but moved with the fluid grace of big cats. Their bodies were covered in scales, their hands tipped with retractable claws that could slice through metal. Rows of sharp teeth filled their mouths. Bioluminescent markings on their skin could glow in different colors depending on their mood. For 10,000 years, they had ruled this sector of space. Their empire stretched across 50 star systems. They had never lost a war. When humans first encountered them 6 months ago, everyone thought it would mean conflict. The Varthek saw humans as weak, soft, prey creatures, but somehow, the 2 species had started talking instead of fighting. Now, Nari was here, in the heart of their homeworld, walking toward a meeting that could change everything. The corridor ended at another set of doors. These opened automatically, revealing a huge circular chamber. At its center sat High Matriarch Velratha, on a throne made of black stone. She was even larger than her guards, her scales a deep crimson color with gold markings that pulsed with light. Her eyes fixed on Nari with an intelligence that was almost frightening. "Welcome, human," Velratha said. Her voice was surprisingly smooth. "You are Nari of Earth, yes?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Nari replied, bowing as she had been taught. "Thank you for inviting me. Come closer. I wish to see you better." Nari walked forward, very aware of the dozens of Varthek guards lining the walls. Each one could kill her in seconds if they wanted. She stopped 10 feet from the throne and waited. Velratha leaned forward, studying her. "You are so small," she said. "So fragile. No claws, no scales, no natural weapons. How did your species ever survive?" "We learned to think, Your Majesty," Nari answered. "We learned to work together. We learned to tell stories and pass knowledge to our young." "Stories?" The matriarch's head tilted. "You survived? Through stories?" "In a way, yes. Stories teach us lessons. They help us remember important things. They connect us to each other." Velratha was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a gesture with one clawed hand. "I have read your file. Nari of Earth. Before you became a diplomat, you worked with young humans. Children, you call them." "Yes, Your Majesty. I was a teacher. I taught children aged 3 to 6. And you told them stories? Every day." "Stories help children learn and grow. They help them sleep. They help them understand the world. The matriarch's markings shifted to a deep purple color. Nari had studied enough to know this meant she was thinking hard about something. Our cubs are restless, Velratha said finally. For weeks now. They do not settle at night. Our traditional songs and rituals are not working. They grow aggressive, earlier than usual. Our caretakers are concerned. Nari felt her heart beat faster. Cubs. The matriarch was talking about Varthek children. The royal nursery holds 12 cubs, Velratha continued. They are the future of our empire. Each one descended from our greatest warriors and leaders. Their well-being is our highest priority. I understand, Your Majesty. No outsider has ever entered the royal nursery. It is our most sacred place. Only the elite guard and selected caretakers may enter. The matriarch paused, but I am considering making an exception. Nari's mind raced. She knew what was being offered. Perhaps, if you agree, you would be the first alien to ever see them. The first to enter our nursery. But know this. Human, if you harm them in any way, if you frighten them or cause them distress, you will not leave that room alive. Is this clear? Very clear, Your Majesty. And do you accept? Nari thought about Deho's warnings. She thought about the danger. But she also thought about 12 children who couldn't sleep, who were growing up too aggressive, too fast, children who needed someone to help them. Yes, she said. I accept. Velratha's markings shifted to bright gold. Then you will begin tomorrow evening. Commander Taeyang will escort you. He leads the elite guard. His warriors will watch your every move. Disappoint me, and it will be the last thing you do. And, I understand, Your Majesty. I won't let you down. As Nari was escorted out of the chamber, she wondered what she had just agreed to. Tomorrow she would enter a room full of predator children, each one probably capable of serious harm despite their young age. She would be watched by elite warriors ready to kill her. But somewhere in that nursery were 12 cubs who needed help. And Nari had never been able to turn away from a child in need, no matter how different or dangerous they might be. Tomorrow would either be the start of something amazing or the end of her life. She really hoped it would be the first option. The next evening, Nari waited outside the royal nursery, with her hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. Commander Taeyang stood beside her, his massive form blocking out most of the light. 6 other guards surrounded them, each one armed and alert. The rules are simple, Taeyang said. His voice was cold and professional. You will not touch the cubs unless they approach you first. You will not make sudden movements. You will not raise your voice. If any cub shows signs of distress, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood, Nari replied. She held up her small tablet device. I brought stories from Earth. Children's stories. They're gentle and calming. Taeyang looked at the tablet like it might explode. If that device makes any threatening sounds, I will destroy it and remove you from the nursery. It only displays images and text. Nothing dangerous. We shall see. The commander placed his clawed hand on a scanner beside the massive door. Remember, human, I have killed enemies across 100 battlefields. Protecting these cubs is my sacred duty. Do not test me. The door opened with a soft hiss. Nari stepped through and stopped, amazed by what she saw. The nursery was enormous. The ceiling stretched up at least 50 feet and was made of transparent crystal, showing the purple sky outside. Inside, the room was designed to look like a natural environment. There were trees, real ones, growing from soil. A small stream ran through the center, the water clear and bubbling. Rocks and caves created hiding spots. It was like a piece of wilderness captured inside the palace. And then Nari saw the cubs. 12 young Varthek were scattered around the space. They were already as big as large dogs, their scales not yet fully developed. Some were wrestling with each other, rolling and biting in play. Others were climbing trees or splashing in the stream, Their markings glowed in various colors, greens and blues and soft purples. The moment Nari entered, every cub stopped what they were doing. 12 pairs of golden eyes locked onto her. The room went completely silent. "They smell you," Taeyang said quietly. "They've never smelled anything like you before." One of the cubs, slightly smaller than the others, took a cautious step forward. His scales were dark blue with silver markings. He sniffed the air, his head tilting with curiosity. Nari slowly knelt down, making herself smaller and less threatening. She had worked with nervous children before. The principle was the same. Be calm. Be patient. Let them come to you. "Hello," she said softly. "My name is Nari. I came to tell you stories, if you'd like to hear them." The small blue cub took another step closer. Then another. The others watched, uncertain. The cub was now only a few feet away. Nari could see his sharp little teeth, the claws that flexed in and out of his paws. He could hurt her badly if he wanted to. Instead, he sat down and made a small chirping sound. "That's Rixal," Taeyang said. "The High Matriarch's youngest grandson. He's the most curious of the group." "Hello, Rixal," Nari said. She activated her tablet, and a soft glow appeared above it. A holographic image formed a picture of a forest on Earth. "Would you like to hear a story?" Rixal chirped again. The other cubs began moving closer, their curiosity overcoming their caution. Nari selected a story she had loved as a child. "This is a story about a toy rabbit who wanted to become real," she began. Her voice was soft and steady, the same voice she had used with countless human children. "Once, there was a velveteen rabbit." As she read, something amazing happened. The cubs stopped playing and fighting. One by one, they settled down around her. Some sat, others lay down on their bellies. Their glowing markings began to dim, a sign they were relaxing. Nari used different voices for different characters in the story. She made the rabbit sound gentle and hopeful. She made the skin horse sound wise and kind. The cubs watched the holographic images that appeared with the story pictures of the nursery, the toys, the boy who loved the rabbit. Even the elite guard seemed affected. Taeyang, who had been standing rigid and ready to strike, relaxed slightly. His eyes followed the story, watching the images with something that looked like wonder. When Nari reached the part where the rabbit became real, transformed by love into a living rabbit, young Rixal made a small sound. Before Taeyang could react, the cub climbed into Nari's lap. Every guard tensed. Hands went to weapons. Taeyang took a step forward, but Nari simply adjusted her position slightly, making room for the cub, and continued reading. Rixal curled up against her, his head resting on her arm. He began making a sound she had never heard before. A deep, rhythmic rumbling. It sounded almost like a cat's purr. "Varthek cubs don't purr," Taeyang said, his voice filled with confusion. "That's a sound of deep contentment. We rarely make it, even as adults." The other cubs moved even closer. Soon, Nari was surrounded by them. Their warm bodies pressed against her sides and back. They were heavy and smelled like something wild, but they were gentle. They listened to every word. Nari finished the story and looked around at the 12 young faces watching her. "Did you like it?" she asked. A chorus of chirps and small roars answered her. The cubs' markings were glowing in soft, happy colors. "I have more stories," Nari said. "Many more. Would you like to hear another one?" The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Nari smiled and selected another story from her tablet. This one was about a boy who traveled to where the wild things were. As she read, she noticed Taeyang speaking quietly into a communication device. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she caught a few words. Unprecedented. Pack behavior. Impossible. The cubs didn't notice. They were lost in the story, their eyes following the images of the wild things with their terrible teeth and terrible claws. When the story's hero became king of the wild things, Several cubs roared softly in approval. 2 hours passed like minutes. Nari told story after story, and the cubs listened to every single one. When she finally said it was time to stop for the night, there were disappointed sounds from all around her. "I'll come back," she promised. "If you'd like me to." Rixal, still in her lap, looked up at her with his golden eyes. Then he did something that made even Tae-Yang gasp. He gently pressed his forehead against Nari's hand, a Varthek gesture of trust and affection, usually reserved only for family. As Nari left the nursery, escorted by the stunned elite guard, she felt a warmth in her chest. Those cubs weren't so different from human children after all. They just needed someone to help them settle down, to show them gentleness in a world that taught them only strength. Behind her, she could hear the cubs settling into their sleeping areas, their markings dim and peaceful. For the first time in weeks, they would sleep well, and Nari knew she would return. She had to. Those children needed her. 3 weeks passed, and Nari visited the nursery every evening. The cubs began waiting for her at the door, their markings glowing bright with excitement when they caught her scent. They had learned her schedule and would gather in their favorite spot, a soft area near the artificial stream where cushioned roots made comfortable seating. Tae-Yang and his guards no longer watched her with suspicion. They found themselves drawn to the stories too. Nari had caught several guards leaning closer to hear better, their fierce faces softening as they listened to tales from Earth. But tonight, Nari was exhausted. Daeho had assigned her extra work preparing reports for the human government. She had been awake for nearly 20 hours, surviving on coffee and determination. She knew she should have canceled the visit, but the thought of disappointing the cubs made her push through her fatigue. When she entered the nursery, the cubs rushed to greet her with chirps and small roars. Rixal, as always, was first to reach her. He had grown noticeably bigger in the past weeks, his scales darkening to a deeper blue. He pressed his head against her leg in greeting. "Hello, everyone," Nari said, trying to sound energetic. "Ready for stories?" The cubs settled around her faster than ever before. They had learned the routine. Some brought her soft materials to sit on cushions they dragged from their sleeping areas. Others positioned themselves in their favorite listening spots. Nari sat down, feeling the weight of exhaustion in every muscle. She activated her tablet and selected a story called Where the Wild Things Are. It was one of her favorites, and the cubs loved it because the wild things reminded them of themselves. "The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another," she began, but her voice was softer than usual. The words felt heavy in her mouth. The cubs noticed. Several of them shifted positions, moving closer. Rixal climbed into her lap as he always did, but this time, he settled more gently, as if he sensed something was wrong. Nari continued reading, but the room felt warm and comfortable. The sound of the stream was soothing. The cubs were unusually still and quiet, their breathing deep and rhythmic. Her own breathing began to match theirs. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. She read, her voice getting quieter and quieter. The tablet slipped from her fingers. Nari's head drooped forward, then to the side, coming to rest against a soft, cushioned root. She was asleep before she even realized what was happening. The story ended mid-sentence, the holographic images fading away. For a moment, the cubs didn't move. They looked at each other, confused. The story had never stopped like this before. Rixal chirped softly and pawed at Nari's arm, but she didn't wake up. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of returning to their play or wandering off as young cubs usually would, they stayed. Rixal curled up tightly against Nari's chest, his head tucked under her chin. His purring sound returned, deep and steady. The other cubs moved with purpose. They arranged themselves in a circle around Nari's sleeping form. The larger ones positioned themselves on the outside, facing away, their eyes scanning the nursery. The smaller ones tucked themselves closer to her body, providing warmth and comfort. Their bioluminescent markings dimmed to the faintest glow, just enough to see by, but not enough to disturb sleep. They went silent. Even their breathing became quieter. They were guarding her. This continued for 2 hours. The cubs maintained their protective circle without breaking. When one needed to move, another immediately filled the gap. They were practicing skills that usually didn't develop for years: pack protection, coordinated defense, shared vigilance. Commander Taeyang entered the nursery for the evening security check, followed by 6 guards. They came through the door expecting to collect Nari and escort her back to the human quarters. Instead, they found something that stopped them in their tracks. Nari was asleep, her small human form barely visible in the center of a tight formation of cubs. Rixal's head rested on her chest, rising and falling with her breathing. The other cubs were arrayed around them, their positions strategic and protective. When the cubs heard the guards enter, their heads turned as one. Their eyes began glowing brighter. Several of them rose to a crouch, their small claws extending. Rixal, who had never made an aggressive sound toward the guards before, let out a low warning rumble from deep in his chest. They were protecting her. Protecting her from the elite guard itself. "By the ancestors," one guard whispered. "They've pack-bonded with her." Taeyang stood frozen, his tactical mind trying to process what he was seeing. In 10,000 years of Vartech history, cubs had never shown protective behavior toward another species. They barely showed it toward their own caretakers at this age. Pack bonding was sacred, reserved for family, for those proven worthy through years of shared experience. Yet here it was, happening before his eyes, with a human they had known for less than a month. "Don't move," Taeyang ordered his guards. "Don't make any threatening gestures." He activated his communication device. "This is Commander Taeyang. I need the High Matriarch at the Royal Nursery immediately. Emergency. Priority. Under 3. Under 3. "Sir, what's the nature of the emergency?" came the response. Taeyang looked at the scene before him, the sleeping human, the protective cubs, the impossible reality of what was happening. "Something that will change everything," he said quietly. High Matriarch Velratha arrived within minutes, moving faster than her age should have allowed. Her personal council followed, their faces showing alarm. Emergencies at the nursery were rare and serious. They entered to find the elite guard standing motionless near the door, and beyond them, the unprecedented scene. Velratha's markings flashed through a dozen colors: shock, disbelief, understanding, and finally, wonder. She approached slowly, making no sudden movements. The cubs tracked her with their eyes but held their positions. She circled the group carefully, observing from every angle. The cubs' body language was unmistakable. This wasn't play or accident. This was genuine protective behavior, the kind their species only displayed for pack members. "Wake her gently," the matriarch finally commanded. Taeyang stepped forward. The cubs tensed, but Rixal recognized him and chirped softly. "Nari," the commander said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Nari, you need to wake up." Nari's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she looked confused. Then she saw where she was surrounded by cubs, with the High Matriarch and her entire council staring at her. Her face went pale. "I'm so sorry," she began, trying to sit up. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was just so tired. And—" "Be silent," Velratha said, but there was no anger in her voice. "Do you know what has happened here?" Nari looked at the cubs around her, at their protective positions. I'm not sure." "They have chosen you," the matriarch said. "Our cubs have pack-bonded with you. In our entire history, this has never happened with an outsider, let alone another species. You have become part of their pack, Nari of Earth. And that changes everything." The council chamber was filled with voices, all of them loud and arguing. Nari sat in a chair that was too large for her, feeling very small. Daeho stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder for support. Around them, dozens of Vartech officials debated her fate. "This is an aberration," one elder was saying. his scales a dull gray with age. The human must have used some chemical, some trick, to manipulate the cub's behavior. We tested her, Taeyang replied firmly. He stood at attention near the High Matriarch's throne. She carries no unusual substances, no technology beyond her story device. The pack bonding is genuine. John 17. Non 7. Impossible, another council member hissed. Prey species cannot pack bond with predators. It goes against nature itself. High Matriarch Velratha raised one clawed hand, and the room fell silent. She had been quiet throughout the debate, simply observing. Now, her golden eyes fixed on Nari. Tell me, human, she said, what is your secret? How did you win the trust of our young so completely? Nari took a breath. I don't think I did anything special, Your Majesty. I treated them like children. I was gentle with them. I told them stories that taught them things about love and friendship and becoming who you're meant to be. I showed them that being gentle doesn't mean being weak. Being gentle doesn't mean being weak, Velratha repeated slowly. We have never taught our cubs this. We teach them strength, combat, survival. We prepare them for a harsh universe. But they're still children, Nari said quietly. They need more than just strength. They need comfort and stories and someone to help them feel safe. That's true for all children, no matter what species they are. The gray elder made a disgusted sound. You speak of making them soft, weak. I speak of making them balanced. Nari replied, finding her courage. Strong in battle. Yes, but also strong in spirit. Your cubs are learning to be warriors, but my stories teach them why to fight to protect those they love, to defend the innocent, to stand for what's right. Isn't that better than just fighting because you're told to? Taeyang stepped forward. If I may speak, Your Majesty? Velratha nodded. I have listened to the human stories for 3 weeks now, the commander said. At first, I thought they were foolish, meaningless tales for soft species, but I was wrong. These stories teach courage, sacrifice, honor, loyalty. All the things we value. They just teach them differently. He paused. The stories made me think about why I became a warrior. Not just to fight, but to protect. The human's words reminded me of that purpose. There was shocked silence. Commander Taeyang was known as the hardest, most disciplined warrior in the Empire. If he was speaking in favor of the human's influence, the cubs are healthier too, said a female caretaker. They sleep better. They're less aggressive with each other. They still train and fight, but they also show more cooperation, more. Velratha stood from her throne, and everyone fell completely silent. She walked down the steps and approached Nari. The human felt her heart racing as the massive predator stopped just inches away. Stand, the matriarch commanded. Nari stood on shaking legs. Velratha studied her for a long moment. You are small and weak by our standards. You have no natural weapons, no scales to protect you. Yet you walked into a room of predator cubs without fear. You showed them a strength we did not know existed, the strength of compassion. She turned to address the council. Our empire has ruled through power and conquest for 10,000 years. We have never questioned this path. But perhaps we have been incomplete. Your Majesty, surely you're not suggesting, the Grey Elder began. I am suggesting that the cubs have shown us something we were too proud to see, Velratha interrupted. There is more than one kind of strength, and if our future leaders have chosen to learn from both kinds, who are we to deny them? After, she turned back to Nari. I am creating a new position in our empire. You will be the story guardian, the first of your kind. You will continue teaching our cubs, showing them the human way of thinking while they learn our warrior traditions. You will be granted honorary family status and the protection that comes with it. Nari's legs felt weak. Your Majesty, I'm honored. But this is not a request, Velratha said, but there was warmth in her voice now. The cubs have chosen you as pack. We do not undo such bonds. Ever. You are part of our family now, whether you intended it or not. Deho squeezed Nari's shoulder. She could feel him trembling, whether from fear or excitement, she wasn't sure. What does this mean for the Alliance? Deho asked. Velratha's markings shifted to bright gold. It means everything has changed. If humans and Varthek cubs can form pack bonds, then we are not as different as we believed. We can learn from each other. Your species has something precious, the ability to connect, to teach through stories, to show strength through gentleness. These are things we need. She addressed the council again. I am proposing an exchange program. Human teachers will come to help raise our young, teaching them these stories and this compassion. In return, our warriors will teach humans our survival skills, our tactical knowledge. Both species will become stronger together. The gray elder looked like he wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in the matriarch's eyes and stayed silent. But understand this, Nari of Earth, Velratha said, her voice serious. You have taken on a great responsibility. Those 12 cubs are the future of our empire. They will become generals, leaders, perhaps even the next matriarch. How you shape them now will shape our entire civilization. Can you accept this burden? Nari thought about the cubs, about Rixal's trusting eyes, about the way they all listened so intently to her stories, about how they had protected her while she slept. She thought about the chance to help them grow into leaders who were both strong and kind. Yes, she said firmly. I accept. Velratha placed a heavy hand on Nari's shoulder. Her claws, which could so easily harm, rested there gently. Then, welcome to the family, Story Guardian. May your words bring wisdom to our young and unity to our peoples. As they left the council chamber, Deho whispered to Nari, do you realize what you've just done? You've changed the course of history for both our species. Nari smiled tiredly. I just wanted to help some children sleep better. Well, Deho said with a laugh, you certainly did more than that. That night, when Nari returned to the nursery, the cubs rushed to greet her with even more enthusiasm than before. They had somehow sensed that something important had happened, that she was truly theirs now. As she settled down to read them a new story, Rixal in her lap and the others gathered close, Nari felt a warmth in her heart that had nothing to do with their body heat. She had found her purpose among the stars. 6 months had passed since Nari became the Story Guardian, and the royal nursery looked very different now. The Varthek decorations of battle and conquest still covered some walls. But now, they shared space with images from Earth, forests and oceans, cities and farms, pictures of human children playing. 2 cultures, blending together in one space. Nari sat in her usual spot by the stream, but today she held an actual book instead of her tablet. It was a collection of Varthek legends that she had spent weeks learning to read in their language. The cubs sat around her as always, but they had grown significantly. Rixal was now the size of a full-grown wolf, his scales gleaming dark blue with bright silver markings. The others were equally impressive, young predators growing into their strength. Today's story is from your own history, Nari said in the Varthek language. She still had an accent, but the cubs understood her perfectly. It's about the warrior Keshvara, who defended an entire city alone for 3 days. The cubs leaned forward eagerly. They loved their own legends as much as Earth stories now. Nari read the tale in the dramatic style Varthek preferred, her voice rising and falling with the action. When she reached the part where Keshvara roared her challenge to the enemy army, all 12 cubs roared with her. Behind her, Commander Taeyang smiled. He visited every evening now, not to guard, but to listen. He had brought other members of the elite guard with him tonight, warriors who wanted to hear both human and Varthek stories. Several had even asked Nari to teach them how to tell stories to their own children. You've improved your pronunciation, Taeyang said when the story ended. That last roar almost sounded authentic. I've been practicing, Nari replied with a grin. Though I'll never manage the volume you all do. You bring different strengths, he said. Over the past months, Taeyang had become one of Nari's closest friends. The fierce warrior had a surprisingly gentle side that the stories had helped him rediscover. Speaking of which, Ambassador Dae-ho asked me to tell you that 5 more human teachers arrived today. They'll begin training next week. Nari felt a surge of pride. The exchange program had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. Human teachers were coming to work with Varthek young, while Varthek warriors traveled to Earth to train human soldiers and teach survival skills. Both species were learning from each other. And there's other news, Taeyang continued. 3 Varthek families outside the royal household have requested human story guardians for their cubs. The High Matriarch approved the requests. That's wonderful, Nari said. This is really working. It's more than working. It's transforming us. Taeyang gestured to the cubs. Look at them. They're being trained in combat, just as fiercely as any previous generation. But they're also learning empathy, creativity, cooperation, in ways we never taught before. They'll be better leaders because of it. Young Rixal climbed into Nari's lap, which was becoming more difficult as he grew. He still did it every day, though, unwilling to give up the habit. He made his purring sound, which had become common among all 12 cubs. Other Varthek throughout the Empire had started doing it too, a sound of contentment they had forgotten they could make. Tell us a new story, Rixal said in careful but clear human speech. All the cubs were learning English now, just as Nari was learning their language. All right, Nari said, but this one is special. I wrote it myself. The cubs' markings brightened with excitement. Nari's original stories had become their favorites. This is a story about a small human who traveled very far from home, she began. She was scared because everything was new and different. The creatures she met were strong and fierce, with sharp claws and teeth. They could have hurt her easily. But instead of seeing her as prey, they saw her as family. And she taught them that the strongest power in the universe isn't the ability to destroy, it's the ability to connect, to understand, to care for each other. The cubs listened intently. Even the elite guard had gone quiet. The human learned that being different doesn't mean being enemies. The fierce creatures learned that being strong doesn't mean being cruel. Together, they became something better than either could be alone. They became family, not because they were the same, but because they chose to see past their differences to what really mattered: respect, trust, and love. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then Rixal spoke quietly. That's your story, isn't it? You and us. Nari smiled and stroked his scaled head. Yes, it's our story. All of us together. I like it, one of the other cubs said. It's better than stories about fighting. Fighting stories are good too, Nari said. You need to know about courage and strength, but you also need to know about kindness and understanding. The best leaders need both. High Matriarch Velratha entered the nursery, and everyone stood to attention. The cubs immediately went to greet her, rubbing against her legs affectionately. She had started visiting more often, interested in seeing the changes in her grandchildren. Story Guardian, she greeted Nari formally, though her markings showed warmth. Walk with me. They left the nursery together, moving through the palace gardens. The night sky above showed both Earth and the Varthek homeworld's 2 moons, a reminder of how far Nari had come. The cubs will begin their formal education soon, Velratha said. They'll train as warriors, diplomats, scientists, leaders, but they'll do so with the foundation you've given them. Understanding that strength and compassion are not opposites, but partners. I just told them stories. Nari said, modestly. You did far more than that. You showed us that we were incomplete. For 10,000 years, we ruled through fear and power. We were strong, yes, but we were also isolated. No other species trusted us. No one wanted to ally with us except through fear. In 6 months, you've done what centuries of conquest could not. You've made us part of something larger. Other species are watching this alliance. They see Varthek cubs purring. They see our warriors reading stories to their young. They see us changing, growing. Is that a good thing? Nari asked. It's the best thing, Velratha replied. Fear made us strong but alone. This new path will make us strong and connected. That's true power. She placed a gentle hand on Nari's shoulder. Thank you, child of Earth. Thank you for falling asleep in our nursery and showing us who we could become. Nari felt tears in her eyes. Thank you for letting me be part of your family. They returned to find the cubs and the elite guard gathered together, telling stories back and forth. Varthek legends mixed with Earth fables. Both sides learning, both sides growing. Rixal saw Nari and bounded over, careful not to knock her down despite his size. Will you always be our story guardian? He asked. Nari hugged him as well as she could with his scales and bulk. Always, she promised. Forever then, he said simply, as Nari settled back into the group, listening to a young Varthek guard attempting to tell the 3 little pigs, with dramatic roars. She thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. She had come to an alien world expecting to be a simple diplomat. Instead, she had become a bridge between species, a teacher to predator cubs, and proof that the universe was much bigger and more connected than anyone had believed. 2 worlds, once separated by fear and misunderstanding, now bound together by something as simple and powerful as stories told with love. And in a nursery filled with young predators and a small human, the future of the galaxy was being written one story at a time.